there, it's Unique again. Thank you so much for listening to the first story episode. I'm really in awe of the feedback, the amazing comments, and how some of you are interested in the story and where it leads to. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And with that, I welcome you to the second part of the story, the second and last part of the story. Welcome. Yeah, so we stopped at the morning and the whole situation at that. Vera Amma in this case. So we're talking about the aftermath of her death and what is going on. So going from there, turns out that a lot of stories are beginning to come up and people are beginning to talk of course dust has settled and everybody can now see a little bit clearer, and they're beginning to think, family begins to think like this was just an awkward coincidence. People are grumbling, but there's really no evidence that anything happened, there was any foul play, because obviously these things could happen. Someone could fall off out of excitement, out of lack of expertise of climbing these things and all of that. So they just have rumors, but that's it. It just ends at rumors. And some weeks later, the resort is trying to work on damage control, and for some reason the husband or the family do not spread the information of her death. It doesn't get to the blogs, it doesn't get anywhere. So they're really managing the whole aftermath very well. It's easy to manage because nobody's really talking about it. It's not in the media yet, so it's really fine. And they've instructed everybody that works there to not mention this to outsiders so that the story just doesn't get out. And of course there are no pictures or videos or anything circulating, so it's very easy to manage the situation for them. Moving on from that, Bera and Ahmad, they have always had issues in their marriage, coming up recently. So they had a therapist who was always there for them, who they were always seeing, and who was the one that suggested this particular trip. Who suggested a trip actually, or time away from their daily routine, and then Ahmad suggested the resort. So this therapist was really sad, that sort of feeling guilty, this is not indirectly his fault in some way, considering the fact that it was the one that mentioned they need time away from their daily routine and all of that. And Ahmad was extremely evasive. He wasn't coming back to see the therapist, and the therapist felt that at least if something was up and he just lost his wife, this would be the right time for him to get closer to the therapist and seek help, considering he just had a major loss. But it was away from everyone, and the therapist was the one that was trying to constantly reach out, even suggest or provide services without being paid, because he really knew the couple and he cared about them. There was an old therapist that felt he was interested in the couple. So from there, that happened, and some weeks later, months, about 6 weeks later, the stories were still going around. It was of course dying down in the family circle if something was wrong, if there was foul play and all of that. And Ahmad was still living in the house which Bera owns, by the way, but because they're a couple, it's his now, and all those things. And the family are not really interested in properties or anything. They've let it go. Even if they think that something must have gone wrong, they have no evidence. They don't have any evidence that the marriage was even in turmoil or anything was going on. So everybody just feels like it's fine, it's just happened, and let him grieve in peace and let him own the things, and it really doesn't matter to them. Well, Ahmad, some 6 weeks after the death, went to the insurance company where he and his wife had an life insurance policy. So Ahmad has a life insurance policy. his wife also had a life insurance policy, and so he visited the branch, and the name of the insurance company is MAZ. And he visited MAZ and asked for like a particular officer that could attend to his request, and provided the documents for his wife's death certificate and everything, and asked for the benefits, to the remaining partner, to the next of kin when the eventuality of death happens. And so he made this request, and the insurance company, of course, wanted to start processing the whole thing. So they asked for documentations, they asked for the cost of death, they asked for everything to be able to process his request in this regard. And so making the step during that process, and he also went to a company for benefits, spousal benefits when someone dies, and then he tried to start processing that as well. In the company, it wasn't really a hard thing. It wasn't really stressful or anything for him to get benefits, because obviously the spouse is the remaining family member, next of kin, and yes, they would process whatever benefits she had to him automatically without questioning. But the life insurance company was a bit more complex, because they're going to be paying a lot of money, they're going to be giving out so much money, so they need to make sure that everything is in place. They need to make sure that there was no foul play. They need to make sure that this is not insurance fraud, like in quotes, because a lot of this happens. So they need to make sure that things are filed in the right way. And so they decided to have a private investigator find out what was going on, because the life insurance policy was for a lot of money, was for 50 million naira, and they were trying to make sure that this was fine, considering the fact that the life insurance policy had just been purchased 4 months before our death. They just purchased the life insurance policy for both Ahmad and for Bera with their company 4 months ahead, and they bought one of the best plans, which the highest payout plan was for 50 million if someone died, which was very high. The premium they paid was high, and they're just wondering, okay, in 4 months, and then actually the person dies. That's kind of odd, considering the situation and our age and every risk factor they had thought about before selling the plan. And so they had to make sure that, okay, they're going to be losing 50 million naira to this person. Can they at least try to spend maybe just $1 million with investigators that will just find out if this is actually what's it, if there's no foul play, there's nothing wrong and all of that. So they employed the private investigator to look into this case to figure out what happened. And so this private investigator will have to go to the scene of death, check the autopsy reports, check everything to make sure that it tallies what the husband is saying, and that it wasn't intentional in any form, and that there was no foul play involved. So the private investigator had to figure out all these things. And so while Ahmad was trying to get money from the company, he was also living in a house. Of course, most of the properties that were in the house, the family didn't need them, so it was his now, and he got a lot of payout from the company as well. And so he had resigned his job. He claimed that he was grieving, so he had resigned his job, and he was just trying to figure out his life going forward. And at the same time, he was trying to get money from this insurance company, and they told him they would do some private investigation and they'll get back to him, which is fine by him. He knew that he had submitted the right documents, and they'll figure out whatever he had submitted was the right thing in the first place. So it was fine, and so he was waiting for their feedback. Anyway, this private investigator starts going very deep. He goes into the medical records to make sure that it wasn't something was wrong with her prior, and they just bought the insurance plan to make a rules or anything. And the insurance plan was purchased by Ahmad. Of course, Vera signed, and she had a signature and everything over it, both on his own and on her own. So it wasn't like she wasn't aware of the insurance policy. She was aware, but they had to make sure that they medical history they submitted at time of purchase was right. So they visited the hospital, and somehow they got to know that she had been seeing a therapist. So now the private investigator was really wondering, like, oh, this wasn't a suicidal person who actually bought the plan so that she would kill herself, and then, for whatever reason, the husband knew she was suicidal. And so he asked to see the therapist. The therapist, of course, had signed a non-disclosure agreement. I don't know what this confidentiality agreement with the couple. So of course he can't let them know the details of their therapy sessions or anything. It was against the rules. But he just told them that yes, there was patient, and no, she wasn't suicidal. So basic answers was she wasn't suicidal. Yes, she was my patient, she wasn't suicidal, so she definitely didn't kill herself. And so the doctor, from the private investigator, from finding out things in the hospital, found out that she had been a patient for a long time. Of course, he couldn't have access to her medical reports, but it was made to understand that she didn't have any chronic thing that she was treating. She was practically coming with her husband to see a therapist, and then prior to now, they had been seeing a gynecologist there as well, probably for fertility, for childbearing. So he didn't really have any lead from that point. He didn't have any lead from the hospital. So yeah, of course, had to visit the scene of the crime. Not the crime. He had to visit the scene of the death. So he visited the resort, he spoke to the staff, and from inquiring, he found out that Mr. Ahmad had been to the resort before, and one of the staff claimed that she had seen him like twice. The time he just came for a short visit, but the last time was when he came with his wife, of course. And she greeted him, and he said he wasn't the one. So he had apparently been visiting before with different names. They wonder why, or that's what the staff claims. And he didn't have any evidence to prove that, because the records, of course, nobody remembered the dates or anything. And they spoke to the guards on duty that night. They spoke to one of the guards who said, yes, he acknowledged the fact that he knows Bera before now. He knew Bera in the hospital where he used to work, where he thinks that Bera had an affair with the gynecologist on duty. And so the private investigator was obviously interested in this information. Like, what do you mean by you think she was having an affair with the gynecologist on duty at that time in the hospital? And then the guard made the private investigator understand. By the way, this interviews are private, so it's like between the PI and the guard on duty, between the PI and the people that serve them, between the PI and the maids, everyone individually. So it wasn't like it was an open discussion that the supervisor would have known what he said in particular. So he was saying that at that time he knew that Bera and her husband were probably trying to have a child, like so many other people that visited the hospital to see the gynae, because it was a well-renowned gynae, and so Bera was always coming with her husband. And even said that she came back mostly at night to see the gynecologist, and the gynecologist had like a penthouse apartment right at the top of the hospital where he stayed, whenever he's on call or something. And Bera would not now visit the main hospital. She would visit the private place where the gynae was staying every time she came back in the evening. She would have come with her husband in the afternoon, and then she would come back alone in the evening, not visiting the hospital but going to the apartment. So the PI was obviously very interested in this case, so he asked for details of the gynecologist, and the guard gave it to him. Okay, so as far as I continue to remain anonymous, I'm going to give the information. He's going to help solve this case, or help make sure that this guy doesn't get money if he's the one that actually did anything to off his wife, or if there was foul play involved and something. So, and of course to clear their own names, because they were thinking that eyes were on them, obviously, like, I hope no one here actually was involved as well. So he gave him details of the gynecologist, and the PI went on looking for this guy. It was actually very hard to trace him, and then eventually he met with him, and he asked him like, oh, what's up with Bera? We have information that you were actually having an affair with her at one point. What can you tell us about her? Because she turned up dead, and we have to make this huge insurance claim to the spouse. And of course, the gynecologist at that point was like, who is asking for the claim? Is it the husband that is actually asking? And so the PICTIC is the one that's filing for the claim. He was the one that brought the plan and all of that. And so it was like, oh, so they went to a resort together. And the gynae obviously now said, so the fact that they went to the resort together in the first place is a sign that something was not right, because just 2-3 weeks before then, he had found out that his wife was having an affair with him, the gynecologist. And Ahmad had found that out like 3 weeks prior. But he thinks that Ahmad was always known, or he thinks that Ahmad had always had an idea that something was going on between him and his wife. But 3 weeks prior to when they visited this place, Ahmad actually confronted her and said, oh, okay, so for a while I've been thinking this. And she told him, yeah, she's been doing this. Yeah. It was a mistake, she'd stop. She's sorry about that. And so he had asked her, Ahmad had asked her to stop communicating with the gynecologist, cut off all communications. So like 3 weeks before they visited this resort, the wife, Vera, had to stop talking to the gynae. It wasn't, according to him, it wasn't just an affair. It was more like they were in love with each other, or he was really in love with her. He doesn't know what she felt. He can't really say what she felt, but he feels like he was in love with her. She was his best friend. He was her best friend. She came to him with so many worries and fears about a relationship, what she thinks Ahmad is up to, and all of that. And from what he heard, he had always felt that Ahmad knew that she was seeing him. And prior to him, she had been seeing other people too. So it feels like Ahmad had always known the kind of person she was, or that she had fleeting emotions. She was always cheating on him and stuff like that. He felt that Ahmad has always known. But he was thinking that somehow maybe this would be like a last escapade. They would last. He and Vera would last. And so she wouldn't have to cheat on him with other people in the future, and should eventually maybe leave the marriage or something. But so when Ahmad confronted her and asked her to actually stop all communications with him, he felt like, okay, so this is the end. He tried reaching out to her a few times. She wasn't picking up her calls. She wasn't talking to him again. Like, she was actually following Ahmad's instructions. And then only for him to hear some weeks later that she was dead. Like, oh, okay, she was dead. He didn't think anything about it. But now with the PI coming to him saying that Ahmad had booked that trip and Ahmad had bought the plan like 4 months before, he's beginning to think that there's foul play involved, because obviously you knew your wife was cheating on you all as well. And you actually confronted her about it like 3 weeks before, and then you're taking her on a trip. Like, really? Like, that doesn't add up to him. It just doesn't add up. And it feels like even if you're trying to work on your marriage, it won't be immediate. And let's even assume that the assumption of Ahmad always knowing that she was cheating is wrong. At least 3 weeks before he confronted her, then that means he knew at that point that she had been playing games with the doctor. Even if he doesn't know about the other people, he knew about the doctor, was sure about the doctor. So, and then why is he booking a trip though? So the doctor puts a lot of doubts in the PI and the PI's story. Like, okay, so you need to think in another direction. Everything has been smooth up to this point. We think that Ahmad did something to her, and we need to figure out what happened. So they start digging into his life. They start digging into when he bought the plan, where he bought it from. They buy it online. They come to their physical store and all of that. And so they went through their own records in their database. That's Amazing Insurance. They went through the name, the device. They checked through his details, where he purchased it from. He purchased it online, and he was chatting with one of their representatives before he eventually made payments. He was asking the representative repeatedly how much payout, what is the process of making requests for payouts, and all of that. They checked the user ID was using to chat with this agent. They checked through the history of that particular user ID on their website, the traffic that user ID had generated, and checked what parts of the website that particular user ID had visited more. So they found out that he had visited, like he had just come straight from wherever he searched for their company and went straight to life insurance. Didn't go to another place. He was reading about life insurance. He was reading about the payouts, policies, and everything. And then he started chatting with the agent. And then some days later, he just made payment and purchased the plan. So, and downloaded the forms, had his wife fill and then scanning back. So they started seeing that, okay, looks like this guy knew what he wanted to do when he purchased this plan. The thing now is, they're already suspecting foul play. It's beyond the insurance at this point. They have to get the police involved. So they got the police involved. The police decided to speak to family members and then tell them their findings, tell them what they thought happened. They think Ahmad killed her, but they don't know how he did it. They don't know why he did it. They have no physical evidence to prove that he did it, but they think he did it. And so they bring him in for questioning. They ask him all these questions and keep insisting that no, he didn't do anything. Like, it was just a coincidence. He bought the plan because he thought about it in the financial sector as well. So he thought that this is what people do now. Then why can't I just buy a plan and all of that? And then they confronted him with the fact that his wife had been severely cheating on him, and even one of the lovers assumed or mentioned that he knew about it from his actions, visits to the hospital, and everything. The doctor felt that Ahmad has always known that his wife was sleeping with him, and he was like, no, he never knew. He just found out 3 weeks before from a text message. And he confronted her and he told his wife they were going to resolve it between themselves. Nobody gets to talk, and all of that. Well, things look fine. From all indications, the company has to pay him because there is no evidence of foul play still. And so the private investigator, not wanting to lose a case this time, because if he gets to find out anything, he actually gets to save the company money, that's MSC Insurance, he will be given a larger commission. So he needs to work harder at this. So he starts digging and digging and digging and digging, and finds out that Ahmad had seen some girl about 5 months ago, about 6 months before then, and he found out that through the girl, Ahmad started finding out things that his wife has always been cheating on him. The power dynamics of the relationship had always been Vera being at the upper hand because she was richer, she had more money, and all of that. But she still respected him. She was still homegrown. Still, there were some things that he knew wasn't right, like level of funds were not corroborating with how much she was earning. Things she was spending. Sometimes she was going on trips without him, and it seemed like a lot of things were going on I didn't know about. So when he met this girl kind of opened his eyes to a lot of things, and like, guy, obviously your wife is cheating on you. Obviously your wife does a little bit of an aristo thing on the side. And so he starts drifting away from his wife slowly and slowly and slowly, and start getting into this girl deeper. And this girl turns out to be one of the craziest bitches around. Sorry for that word. And she's been known to fight, to do a lot of crazy things, to be involved in really crazy feuds and all of that. And so the private investigator goes in hard on the people around her, and from there we got to find out from one of her friends that she had planned with Ahmad as secret boyfriend to leave the country, to make a lot of money and leave the country by removing their problem. And so the lady was like, that's all she knows. She just knows that they are planning a big scheme and they're planning like this big ball-out thing, but this thing is going to involve them taking out that problem, but she doesn't know the details of this. So again, the PI involves the police, who at this point are like, guy, I thought we did this the other time and we didn't find out anything, like, why are we here again? But the police listened to this story, got this girl involved, and then started finding out a lot of things about her. Go through her phone records. They had to take her phone and Ahmad's phone and they start making deeper searches. And I find out that this girl and Ahmad actually planned what to do. The girl suggested resort, told her to visit twice, see where it was going to push her down from, make it look like a mistake, cash out, and then start their life all over again in Australia. So that was the big plan. They found out everything. The PI gets his huge seller, his huge take home from MEZ insurance. The police are happy with the family. They solved this case, even though they were not really looking at the case in the first place because it was like an open and shut thing. And yeah, so there's justice for Bear after all. But basically, the story pops to my mind because scheming, yes, a lot of scheming going on here. Bear was wrong for cheating on her husband repeatedly and making a fool out of him. But she decided to die though. And do you think that Ahmad wouldn't have done that normally if he hadn't been influenced by the crazy new girlfriend who told him that he could get away with it? Who put ideas in his head and told him his wife was cheating? Of course he knew his wife was cheating. Well, probably was living in denial all this while until he met this girl who was giving him all the crazy ideas and telling him to poke further and do all of these things. And so I'm just here like wondering and like thinking in my head for different opinions and everything. Yeah, they went to jail. Yeah, they're suffering from their crime. They're paying for their crime, and the family gets to have our properties, even though it really didn't mean anything to them in the first place. But at least it's no longer it's not going to fall into the hands of thieves and scammers. So yeah, that's it. Love gone wrong story. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate if you stayed this far. Thank you.